please cover MCP. 76 upvotes, and I also give it an upvote. And that's basically also what we do in this section. So we will make a Model Context Protocol quick guide. I have also made a whole course about the Model Context Protocol, but still I want to include the most relevant things, like I told you, an easy quick start also in this course. So let's just dive straight into it. So first of all, the Model Context Protocol was introduced by Anthropic. And it was introduced on November 25th, 2024. So this is basically, especially in the AI world, like a long time ago. And in the first days, weeks and months, it didn't get the traction that it should get. But later these things changed. You can also see it right here in this Google Trends. First a small spike, then it cooled down a little bit, and then it exploded. In recent days it came a little bit down, but I would not be surprised if we pick back up once again, because I do really think this is a great standard. Before we talk about how this Model Context Protocol works, I want to tell you something. This thing is only valuable if a lot of people using it. Because this needs to be somehow like a standard. Think of it this way. WhatsApp is valuable because a lot of people are on WhatsApp. And ICQ is no longer that valuable. It's not a perfect apple-to-apple comparison, but it's similar. Anthropic has some user guidelines about the Model Context Protocol. And it also has a whole documentation how to use it. And also some general architecture things here. I personally don't like this explanation, that's why we will make it a little bit easier. And of course you also find a lot of stuff on GitHub. You find some explanations, you find some code and a lot more. But first, let's just make it easy. How the Model Context Protocol works. So first, you already know what an LLM can do. An LLM, just like this thing right here, can do function calling. And it can do function calling also to different APIs. So it can do function calling to different application programming interfaces. But here we do have a problem. Because these APIs, they are not specifically made for function calling with these LLMs. So sometimes it can happen that you get like messy data back or something similar. We do not have a standard how an LLM should interact with an API. And basically the Model Context Protocol wants to change that. Some people like to explain it this way. The Model Context Protocol works similar than a USB-C port. So if you talk about your computer, let's just make a stupid computer here. Yeah, this is a computer. It has probably a USB-C port. And on this USB-C port you can connect different things. You can connect like a monitor. You can connect a mouse. You can also connect the power supply. And you can connect, of course, different databases. So like your external hard drive or something else. This USB-C port simply works to communicate with all of these devices in the same way. This is really powerful. So you just need a USB port and you can connect via cable all of these different tools to your computer or to your laptop or to whatever. This is really powerful, it makes it easy. And basically the Model Context Protocol wants to do the same thing, but this thing will be then of course the LLM. And you can connect like not a mouse, but different APIs. In order to do that we always have a MCP Host, MCP Client and MCP Server. The MCP Host could be, for example, Claude Desktop, the OpenAI Agent SDK or something similar. The MCP Client is simply the Model Context Protocol that works in between, so like your USB-C port. And the server can be every single tool that you want to connect, for example sending mails, updating sheets, giving access to vector databases and a lot more. So you can simply connect every single host via the Model Context Protocol to a MCP server. So this is something like function calling on steroids. Better function calling, easier function calling. Because if we use normal function calling with normal REST APIs, it can happen that it's a little bit messy from time to time. And your MCP client, so the Model Context Protocol, simply wants a clear communication via JSON. So your computer would be, for example, the host. The USB-C port is the Model Context Protocol, and the devices that you plug in are the MCP servers. This basically means that we can give our AI agents access to WhatsApp, to different APIs, to databases, to GitHub, to productivity apps, to terminals, to whatever. And we use instead of the normal function calling the Model Context Protocol. This uses every time the same clear standards so that nothing will get messed up. Like I said, function calling on steroids, function calling that works a little bit better. Besides these API calls, you can basically also include resources and prompt templates, but we will not dive into these two things in this course, because this is a little bit special, and especially if we work via n8n, it's not really needed. And one of the coolest things is that we can make an MCP server, for example in n8n, as trigger. So you can press plus, and if you type in, for example, MCP, you get an MCP server trigger. And here you can access different MCP tools. And you see, this thing will get triggered. It will get triggered from outside. You already know it. We have the MCP server. It uses the Model Context Protocol to communicate, but then of course we need a host. And as host we can use, for example, Claude Desktop. Claude Desktop is a really great tool. So what you can do is basically give Claude Desktop the ability to be an agent. Claude Desktop can send mails for you, update your calendar, have access to different databases, Google Sheets, vector databases, and a lot more. We can connect everything via the Model Context Protocol on Claude Desktop. That's a really powerful application that we can build. But of course, that's not all, because we can press plus once again, and if we search, for example, for the AI agent tool, on the AI agent we can also connect different tools, and if we type in MCP here, we can connect, for example, the MCP client tool. And with this MCP client tool, we can also call different MCP server tools. So all of this is really powerful, and we will build cool applications over the next video, because right now basically you understand what the Model Context Protocol is and how it works. The Model Context Protocol can also do something really cool. Here you see, for example, that I have an email agent, and on this email agent we have a lot of different Gmail tools. So we have get mails, send mails, save email draft, send reply, and so on. So we use a lot of different tools here, and we need to tell the agent in the system prompt that he has access to every single tool, and here can be a lot of confusion. The Model Context Protocol also will allow us, for example, to communicate with just the Gmail server, and the Gmail MCP server will then trigger automatically the right action for us. So basically the Model Context Protocol will make agents a lot slimmer, a lot easier. We can address only one tool and call every single function that is possible, and it will be more reliable. So easier, more reliable, and we can connect whatever we want. I have to tell you also right now, basically, this thing we are not here completely, because the AI industry needs to adapt more and more of the servers. Right now we do not have, for example, a Gmail MCP, but we get more and more MCP servers. If you come, for example, on GitHub on awesome MCP servers, you can find some different MCP servers. Here you find a lot of examples that you can integrate, and basically you see there are a lot, and there will be more and more and more. So every single MCP will communicate here with the MCP server. It allows us to do function calling, but in a easier and better way that is a lot cleaner than the normal function calling. So instead of doing function calling to every single tool, one by another, we can do like function calling on one single MCP server from Gmail, and the communication is easier and better. That's at least what MCP promises us. But I have also told you that we are not there yet, but hopefully we will get there. We will dive in all of this in the next videos. And one more thing that I need to tell you. If you basically connect all these tools to your own MCP servers that you create, for example in n8n, you are not able to give a system prompt to the MCP server. The MCP server has something that is able to list all of your tools, and it will simply decide automatically what tools you need to use. So if you create an MCP server inside of n8n yourself, the server on itself will be smart enough to use the right tools, because the server can always list its tools before it calls them. If we come back to the normal function calling once again, basically as soon as we do function calling, we talk with a REST API, and on this REST API we send HTTP requests. A HTTP request method can be, for example, get or post. These are the two things that get used most, but also delete, put, and so on. And that's why we need so much different tools. So here, for example, we send a GET request. Here we send a POST request. So we need different API calls, and the MCP server will no longer accept this. It will no longer accept that we need to send a lot of different HTTP methods. It will translate it via the MCP client in one simple call. So we can simply tell that MCPs and APIs have a lot of similarities, but also some differences. With both, we use the client-server relationship. So with both the MCP and the normal API call via function calling. Both of these things want some layer of abstraction, so you either want to send out data or get data. And it simplifies the integrations. Also, APIs are made for a simple integration. But here comes the difference. The Model Context Protocol is purposely built only for LLMs. So this is the best way for an LLM to communicate with different APIs. And the normal API, this is general purpose. So this is not specifically for an LLM. We can make API calls with whatever. And that's why the Model Context Protocol also seems to have a lower failure rate than the normal function calling to APIs via an LLM. The next thing, dynamic self-discovery. If we call a MCP server, the MCP server can simply list out what this thing can do. If we would make, for example, a call to the Gmail API via an MCP server, the MCP server can list every single thing that is available on the Gmail API. And so we can communicate with just one single tool. And this tool can then simply use dynamically the thing that we need, without the need to connect every single tool to our AI agent. This is also great if an API gets updates. If an API gets updates, your Model Context Protocol can simply list also the newest updates, and you can communicate every time with the same MCP without the need of you changing your application. And the last thing is the standardization of the interface. So every single MCP server works basically the same, where every single API can work differently. If you want to make API calls to 10 different tools, it is possible that you need 10 different API calls, with 10 different ways to setting up your API call. And the Model Context Protocol makes all of this seamlessly, because it is a standard. You can plug it in just like a USB-C port. And now something really interesting, a lot of times your MCP server is simply a wrapper around an API, just like I have told you in these examples previously. And the MCP tool will then simply translate your API call. It's simply a wrapper around an API call, and the Model Context Protocol will simply translate your API call, so that you don't have to worry about it. Long story short, the Model Context Protocol makes it easier to do function calling with our AI agents. It is something like a USB-C port, but explicitly made for LLMs to communicate with different REST APIs. And that's why we will use it in order to build AI applications, so that we can call different tools with ease. And of course, the more people use this protocol, the better it gets. Because if you have, for example, an MCP server from every single company on Earth, it will be obvious that we simply use these MCP servers to communicate with the servers. If you use, for example, Claude Desktop and you want to communicate with Gmail, with Slack, with your calendar, with a database, and so on, we would simply use a MCP server because it makes it easier and more reliable. See you, of course, in the next one as soon as we start to build out the stuff. In this video we will create our first MCP server and we will connect it with Claude Desktop. This is really cool. So Claude Desktop will be our host. We will connect it to the Model Context Protocol and our MCP server will be in our n8n instance. So this is really cool. The first thing that you have to do is to simply Google Claude Desktop. You can press on the first link, and as soon as you are in this application, you can simply download this for your operating system. So for me it would be Windows, for you it can be also Mac, whatever you need to do. So simply download this thing. This is a normal installation. So as soon as you press Windows, you will find it in your downloads. You can open it, and here you simply make a double click and then this thing will get installed. As soon as this thing is installed, it looks something like this. Of course, you have most likely no chats here available. You can also upgrade your plan, but here I'm in a free plan. This is basically like a really similar interface to ChatGPT. On the left side, you can close this thing down or open it up. You can take new chats, and you can also see your older chats that you had with this tool. In the left corner, you have your name, and you can press on it, and here you can simply see with what email address you are connected. You have the normal settings, the language, you can get help, you can view the plans, you can learn more, or you can log out. If you press on view all plans, you see that we get here, for example, a free plan, then a pro plan and a max plan, and they are priced differently. So you can simply see for yourself what's right for you. You also have team and enterprise plans if you want to do something that is a little bit more secure. I don't want to talk about these plans like in that detail. You already know similar things than in ChatGPT. If you are here, of course you can type in your prompt here in the middle. Then you can simply press plus if you want to upload a file or add from GitHub. Then you can also press here in order to give a different style. So you can have a normal style, a concise style, explanatory or formal. And you can also create and edit this style. So if you press on it, you can simply choose this thing for yourself if you really want to. Generally speaking, Claude is really good for creative writing, but it's also really nailed down for coding. A lot of people that like to code a lot, they use Claude 3.7 Sonnet. This is the strongest model. They use this model to code a lot. They also use this over the API in Cursor. You also saw that with this AI agent it works really good. So this is generally speaking a good model. And here you can also see you can write, learn, code, live stuff. And you can also press on Claude's choice and you will get some examples. But the most exciting things or the stuff that we need right now is to press in the left upper corner. Because here you have file. On file you have new conversation, settings, close and exit. Then you have edit. You have undo, redo, cut, copy, paste, select all and find. And you always see these shortcuts. You have view, reload, zoom in, zoom out. You always get these shortcuts. You have developer. You can open up this MCP log file. You will most likely don't have this included because you need to do one simple step previous to this. And lastly, you have help. To open up this documentation, check for updates, submit feedback, or you can also come to the about page. The first thing that you have to do if you want to include MCP servers to Claude Desktop is this right here. You come once again in the left upper corner. You need to press on it, you need to come to help. And here will be a button that is called Developer Mode. As soon as you are the first time in this interface, you need to press on it in order to activate it. So please simply press on the button Developer Mode, because we need this in order to access our MCP tools. As soon as you have pressed on this, you can come back here once again. Then we come to File and we can come to Settings. And on Settings, we will have this Developer Console right now. And we can press on this Developer Console. Also here will be most likely something that is empty. You can also delete this thing because this thing is broken right now, and then something like this will open up. So I would assume that as soon as you do this the first time, something like this will open up. And what you have to do is to press on Edit Config. And if you press on Edit Config, this thing will get opened up. And don't worry, you just have to press on this file that is automatically marked, the Claude Desktop config.json. You can double click on it, and then this thing will open up in your code editor. This could also be a normal text file or whatever. And here is right now only this JSON format. And in this JSON format right now is simply an MCP server included. But here we need to add a little bit of code. And you can simply copy my code and then we can interact with an MCP server. Before we use this code right here, we will go into n8n and create our workflow. So of course we come to the hosted version of n8n. What I want to do is to delete all of this so that we can start from scratch. I call it, for example, MCP for Claude Desktop. Then we simply press plus, and of course we need the MCP server trigger, so you can press on it. And here we get a test URL and a production URL. This is similar to a webhook. But before we talk about webhooks, let's just add some tools. You can simply press plus, and then we can add all the tools that you want. For example, like Google Calendar tool. I simply add this Google Calendar tool. The event will be, for example, create. We need to choose from the list. I simply use my account here. Then the start is now. You can also press so that the AI will define this parameter, and also here I let the AI decide. So basically right now we have connected Google Calendar on our MCP server. And I have to tell you, Google on itself does not have an MCP server. So this is the only downside. This thing, at least at this minute, cannot trigger every single Google event. This can only trigger the event create. Later, as soon as we get native MCP servers from Google, one single calendar tool will do all of it. But let's just work with the stuff that we have. So I just also want to connect, for example, a Gmail tool. So if we press on it, and then I want to have the operation sent, and I also let the AI decide in these things down here. And so we can simply send, for example, also mails out from Claude Desktop. The next thing that I want to do is to add, for example, once again, a Google Calendar tool. So once again, Google Calendar, but this time, of course, it's not create. I just want to have get many so that I can read my calendar. The limit, I just go on 5 because I do not want to have a lot of things here. And here I also let the AI decide, so this should work. And of course we need to select our calendar. Boom, now it works. So right now we have the create and get calendar event. We can send emails and we can also do more. Let's just add a simple tool, the calculator. Next, let's just use Google Sheets, for example. So the Google Sheet tool, what I want to do is get rows. Then I want to choose from a list. Let's just use my leads list and from this file right here. Then the next thing that I want to include is, for example, once again, let's just say Google Sheets tool. I also want to use the leads list with the same thing here, but this time I don't want to have get rows. I just want to have append rows. And here you see that we have name, mail and telephone number, so we can simply let the AI decide all of this. So right now I think we have a powerful MCP server, and don't worry, of course we will also include RAG a little bit later, because we can also connect Pinecone vector databases on these tools. But first let's just see if these things are working or not, and if they are working we will connect our Pinecone vector database, because actually Claude does not have access to a Pinecone vector database. So what we need to do right now is to connect this thing with Claude Desktop. And in order to do that, we need the following things. You need to press on this MCP server trigger, and on this MCP server trigger, you can come to the production URL. This is important. And you can copy this production URL. This production URL will of course only work as soon as this thing is active. So this thing needs to be active so that this trigger will work. So simply throw it at active, come to the production URL and copy it. And then we need to throw the production URL, of course, in this code. And this code always starts with MCP servers. And I have already used this code, so you can see this is basically the code that we need to include. The first thing on this JSON schema is, of course, that we open up our bracket. Then we type in the MCP servers, just like you see right here. Of course, we talk with n8n. The command is npx, so here always works an npx command, and we use the SSE protocol. More on this SSE protocol later, because yeah, we do not have like everything that we really need. And then I have this thing included. Your URL from n8n MCP server trigger. Everything that you have to do is to delete this line here and insert the line, of course, that you have copied from your n8n instance. Then you can copy this whole code, so simply copy this code. You can make this small. Then you can delete all of this code, because I have already included also this bracket and that bracket and the MCP server. So simply delete all of this, include your new code, and then this thing should work. The only thing that you have to do is to save this file up. Of course, you can come here on File and press Save, and then you should be ready to rock. The problem with the server send event is that it's no longer really maintained in the original documentation of the Model Context Protocol. Right now we only have stdio, so the standard input-output, and we do have streamable HTTP. But on the other hand, our command will still work, because n8n simply made a workaround. SSE was for a long time included, right now it gets excluded, like this is a protocol that changes all the time. But n8n simply made a quick fix, a workaround, so the server send event will simply trigger the streamable HTTP. I would assume that n8n will make also some updates over the months, and then I will include them, but for now I do think this should still work. If you come into the documentation of n8n, they will explain you exactly how these things work. And they also tell us that the model context server trigger node supports both the server send event that builds on top of HTTP and also the streamable HTTP. At this moment they don't support the standard input-output, but this is no problem. We simply work, at least right now, with the server send event. This will trigger the streamable HTTP, they will do it in the background for you, and I would assume that they will make some updates over time. I would also recommend you to always take a look at the documentation if something from this course doesn't work immediately, but normally it should, and I will always make updates. As soon as this is saved, you can close this down completely. Then you come back into Claude, and you can also close down Claude completely. So close this down and then close Claude down completely. Also make sure to close down Claude down here. As soon as Claude is completely closed down, you can open it up once again. And after a fresh start, you see this right here. MCP is here now. Access integration in this menu. You can press on these, and here you see that you have the n8n MCP included. And if you press on it, you actually see that we have connected 6 different tools. We have Google Sheets 1, then the Google Sheets, the calculator, Google Calendar 1, Gmail, and Google Calendar. Of course, you could rename these things in n8n so that they make a little bit more sense. So in n8n you can also tell like calendar get on this tool, calendar create on that tool, but let's just leave this like really dump so that we can eventually see that even this dump stuff works for us. Of course, you can disable all tools by pressing on this button, activate all tools by pressing on this button once again, and then you can enable or disenable also these tools right here. The first thing that we want to test is, for example, the calculator tool. So let's just actually test this out and explicitly ask for the calculator, and then we will see if this works or not. What is 77 times 7 times 2? Like, come on, use the calculator, and we send it out. Then you see that you need to give access, and you can either always allow it or allow only once. I just want to allow it once. You can also decline if you want. We allow it once, and then we will ask n8n, and n8n will work in the background. And then you see basically that we get the result, and if you press on these, you see that as a request, you send it out this JSON format, and the response is this thing down here. And if we come in n8n on this editor, you will actually see nothing. But as soon as we come to these executions, you see that one execution came through right now. We used the MCP server trigger, and the MCP server trigger was smart enough to use the calculator tool. So this is really efficient. And basically the stuff that works here in n8n works also for free. Generally speaking, you can also use this, for example, with a AI agent node. But the AI agent always needs to think. It will generate tokens, and these tokens can be expensive. They will add up over time. And with this model context protocol, no token is needed. Then let's just pass some data. Actually, let's just see, we have this Google Sheets tool. This Google Sheets tool is connected with leads. So let's just see what's in my leads list. Right now, here is only me as a lead. So my name, my email, and a random number. That's not really my number. So actually, let's just add a new lead. We come into Claude, and I just want to ask, add this contact to my leads. Paul@paul.com. and some random numbers, and I simply send this out. I will add this to your lead list. Of course, you can allow it once, allow it always, whatever you want. I just allow it once, and then this will get sent out to our n8n instance. And then it tells me that we have successfully added Paul. And it also tells me that Paul is the name, the email is paul@paul.com, and the phone is this thing down here. And if I come into my Google Sheets, you see paul@paul.com, and here's the number. And if I come into n8n on executions, we can actually see that this thing came here through, and it used, of course, this Google Sheets tool. Then let's just ask for leads. List me all my leads, please. We call n8n and basically we should get back Paul and Arnie. And there we have it. Arnie and Paul with the mail and the phone numbers. And also the n8n execution come here through. So what we have used right now is the append sheets tool, the read sheets tool, and the calculator. Actually, let's just test if we can send out a mail, for example. Send a mail to Arnie, tell him I love MCPs. And we send it out. Of course, this thing will right now know that Arnie has this email because it can see it, we have pulled it in. Then we need to allow it, of course, once again, this time I allow it always. I've sent the email to Arnie and so on, and the message is, hi Arnie, I wanted to let you know that I love MCPs. Best regards, like your name. Come on, we can also make this a little bit better. We could tell Claude that our name is XYZ and so on. I hope that you understand this. This is just a dump test from me. If we come to n8n, executions, the newest execution is this right here. And we used, of course, the Gmail tool. And if I come to Gmail, you see this right here. Hey Arnie, I wanted to let you know and so on, best regards, and then you see this. This email was sent automatically with n8n, and of course we do not like this. In order to deactivate this, of course we need to come to the Gmail tool, then add options, append n8n attribution. We do not want to have an n8n attribution. So basically this thing is now turned off. Then I come back to Claude, and I tell Claude once again, send him again a mail. Invite him to dinner and tell him that I will leave, of course, a really great review on the course. Sign off with Lisa. And we send it out. Of course, right now we do not have to give access anymore because I have told Claude that it has access every time. And then this thing tells me I've sent the email once again to Arnie. And here are the details. The message, hi Arnie, I like to invite you to dinner soon. I also wanted to let you know that I'll be leaving a really great review on the course. Looking forward to meeting up. Best regards, Lisa. n8n execution came through. And of course I got also my mail, and this time the mail is signed off by Lisa. So this seems to work perfectly. Next thing, let's just test the Google Calendar, or actually both of the Google Calendar tools, but we will do it quick so that we can go on. Create an event tomorrow in my calendar. It should have a call with mom at 10 AM, and I send it out. It was successful. It also knows my time zone, and it also knows the date. And in my calendar I have call with mom at 10 AM. Tell me, what do I have on calendar tomorrow? I have actually two things on my calendar. I have the call with mom, and I have another live call at 5 PM. And you already saw that these two things are true. So basically every single thing here works. The next thing that we should include is of course a Pinecone vector database, because vector databases are always cool. What we do is of course we press plus. We search, for example, the Pinecone vector store. So Pinecone vector store. We need to connect, of course, our API credential. The operation mode is retrieve documents. Then we give it a name. Let's just call it vector store. Use this tool to search info about what vector store do we use. Let's just actually come to Pinecone and see what vector stores I have included here. We have this older prompting vector store, we have this fluid vector store, we have also this scrape vector database. This thing was created with, I think, n8n. We used, of course, the scraping tool for these, so it does not really matter with what tool you create these vector stores, you can connect them with all of this. Let's just actually use this prompting vector store. On namespaces, we see that we have some records, so I would guess here is once again this chain of draft stuff included that you hopefully already know from previous lectures. So we chose from list, we use prompting, the top K is at 4, include metadata is okay, then we add option, Pinecone namespace, and here we include the namespace that is also called prompting, so that we get everything back that we need. So let's just include prompting. Then, if we use a Pinecone vector database, of course, we need an embeddings model. So actually, let's just connect an embeddings model. We use the OpenAI embeddings. we need to use always the same embeddings that we used in order to embed in this vector store. And then this thing should be perfect. We save it. And right now, let's just ask something actually for the chain of draft. And I do think that we need to tell Claude that it needs to search the vector database. But before we do this, let's just press on it and press on n8n. And you see that actually we just have included the 6 tools. Why we do only have 6? Because we need to restart. We have added new tools, and in order that these new tools will get accepted, we need to restart it. So let's just close it down. Also close it down here. I open it up once again. I can actually press on it, and now we see that we have 7 tools. And the last tool is the vector store tool. And we have trained this vector store, you already know it, on the chain of draft prompting, on diffusion prompting, on LLM prompting, and a lot more. So let's just ask, what are the best tips for prompting diffusion models? Use the vector store. And I send it out. Our vector store with the input best tips for prompting diffusion models. This seems to work. Then we get the response back. Hopefully we also get some lenses back and so on. Yeah, there you see it. I hope you already know that we have trained it on lenses and a lot more. If you do not remember it, of course you can go back, and I also want to show you briefly after this query how we trained this model. And you see that we get a lot of questions to our vector database, because we will get a really nailed down answer back, I think. Okay, and after all of these requests, we get a complete prompting guide of these diffusion models. So this is, to be honest, really impressive, I think. We get everything back that is most likely in our database. And we have everything really nailed down and really precise. So good job, Claude. Claude 3.7 Sonnet is actually a model with the test time compute. That's why we send so many queries and we get everything back. Like, I'm impressed, we get a nice, completely researched paper back. Also with model-specific tips, stable diffusion, mid-journey, and so on. Examples for full prompts, with our lenses and so on. Fantasy concept art. The prompt is an iterative process, so this is like perfect data. And then we got here also everything back. Once again, like, good job, Claude. And right now we have everything to the complete paper that we can eventually copy or publish. We have the normal thing here. By the way, this is called Claude Canvas, similar than to ChatGPT Canvas. So you can actually do all of it similarly than into ChatGPT. And if we come back into n8n, on the executions, we can see, of course, that we asked our Pinecone vector store tool. And if you do no longer remember how you can absorb stuff in a Pinecone vector database, of course you can do it either with n8n, so you can simply use, for example, this Google Drive workflow that I have already showed you, and then you can connect, of course, your vector database in Claude, just like I have showed you in this video. If you want to scrape an entire web page, of course you can also do that. And then insert everything in a Pinecone vector database just like you know, and then simply connect the vector database with your MCP server. This can come through n8n, through Flowwise, through whatever you like. You can simply connect it later, of course, once again with your Claude desktop tool. So in this video you have learned everything that you need to know how you can make Claude desktop to an AI agent via MCP servers. Everything that you have to do is to simply come to Claude desktop, go into the developer mode, throw in a few lines of code, make your MCP servers in n8n, connect it, and then you can add unlimited tools, and the tool calling will be really precise and accurate. And of course, this is not all. You can connect every single MCP server that you find on GitHub. You can connect Firecrawl, you can connect whatever you want. The only downsides are, right now at least, that we can only use this SSE protocol. In the next video I want to show you how we can use this model context protocol only in n8n if you do not like, for example, Claude desktop. But I would strongly recommend you to testing this out, because making Claude into an agent is really exciting, and the n8n workflow works for free, because in n8n we do not use an API with an LLM model that needs to generate tokens. So you have a free AI agent with Claude desktop. In this video we will build, of course, an application that will use the MCP protocol, but this time everything will work into n8n. And you already know it, we need always a host and a server. And we have already built out our server. So what we want to do is, we want to talk to the server, but we want to talk with the server in n8n. And this is actually really easy. If we come on personal once again, and let's just create a new workflow, you can simply press plus, and then you can include this however you want. I just want to show you the simplest way. The simplest way is, for example, to use an AI agent. As soon as you have this AI agent, we trigger via chat. Of course, we need, as always, a chat model. I like to use GPT-4o Mini because it's fast and cheap. You can use also here Claude 3.7 Sonnet or whatever. And you can build out your own standalone applications. You can integrate this into web pages. You can do whatever you want. But everything that you need to do in order to make this as a MCP host is to connect a tool. And if you press on plus on tools, you will find the MCP client tool. So right now, this thing will be our host, but it will only be our host if we connect it with the SSE endpoint. So here we need to type in the URL from our server. So what we need to do right now is to, first of all, of course, save this workflow. Let's just call it MCP Host, for example. Then we come back to personal. We come to MCP for Claude desktop. On the MCP trigger, this thing is of course active. And on this trigger, we come of course once again to the production URL. We copy this production URL. We come back to personal once again. We come to our MCP host, and as soon as we are in this host, we click once again on the MCP client, and here we need to connect our endpoint, and boom, there we have it. The authentication is none. Then the tools to include, you can press on it, you can use all, selected, or all expect. If you use all tools, of course, you can talk to all tools. If you press on selected, you will get here your list, because right now you are connected. You can talk just to Gmail, just to the calculator, just to the vector store, whatever you want. But what I want to do is of course to use here not only the selected, I want to talk to all tools, and right now we have here the host that will talk to our server. So right now I press save, and if I open up this chat here, for example, I can ask something like search in the vector store what is COT prompting, for example. And if I send this out, hopefully we will use our tool. If we do not use our tool, we need to tell this in the system prompt. But it seems to work, so we used our tool, and hopefully we will get the right answer. It's of course the chain of thought prompting, and you can also see that we have called our tool. And if you make this big, you can come to this MCP client. The input was COT prompting, so this is the chain of thought, so not the chain of draft, of course. And then here we get the output. This is the output from the vector database, of course. And if you make this small or close it down or whatever you want to do and come back to personal, so let's just come to the MCP for Claude desktop, so to the server. If we come on executions, you see that the execution comes through, and we talked of course to the vector store. Of course, I don't want to show you like every single thing right now with this MCP clients. You can also connect different clients. You can connect more clients and a lot more. You can also take a look at more example clients. Of course, not only Claude Desktop or n8n can be a client. You do have a lot of different clients. You can connect to every single client that you want. Some people like to work with VS Code and the GitHub Copilot. And also this can be a MCP client. A lot of people love Cursor. You can also connect Cursor or maybe Windsurf. You do find a lot of different clients and you can connect to all of them completely the same way. And if you do have problems with your MCP server and the SSE endpoint is no longer included, because this can happen, you can simply come to your MCP client. And here you see that sometimes it also shows that the server transport as server sent event is depreciated. So you can simply click on HTTP streamable. Now normally this simply works if you use the server sent event, but you can also immediately switch, and the URL is simply the same one. You can simply copy this thing right here. Normally, like I told you, both of these is working. And if you do have problems with your config file, if for some reason the server sent event will not work, you can simply copy this, throw it into ChatGPT and tell ChatGPT that you want to have this as streamable HTTP. And then it should also work. You always need to think how you can leverage AI if you have problems, but normally this should work. One of the coolest things that you can eventually connect is a Zapier integration, because with Zapier you can talk to like nearly everything. Everything that you have to do is to simply Google Zapier, and here you also see that you get a Zapier MCP server, and if you press on these, of course you need to log in or sign up to Zapier if you already use this. This will work perfect for you. If you do not use this, you can test this out if you want, so log in. And if you come to actions.zapier.com, so this URL, you can actually connect your MCP servers as a SSE endpoint. And here you can see that you can talk to all these apps. So there are over 20,000 things here included. And everything that you have to do is to press on MCP. Then of course you get your unique MCP server endpoint, and also this works with the SSE endpoint. So actually what I want to do is to like blur this a bit with my face, and we press copy URL. You also see that we use the SSE endpoint, then we can simply copy this URL. We can come back of course once again into n8n. We can connect like most likely only this thing, so you can delete for example your other MCP server and we will include the new one. So right now this is the Zapier SSE endpoint and we can simply talk to this server. So if we close this down, we will talk to Zapier. And if you come back to Zapier, of course, you can scroll down and see get started. You need to generate your unique MCP endpoint, we already did it. Then we need to configure the actions. And lastly, connect your MCP client to Cursor, Claude Desktop or Windsurf. But we used n8n, but you can of course also connect to your Claude Desktop just like in the last video. You would simply include the URL. This is really similar to this n8n endpoint. You can use ChatGPT to generate this JSON format for you. So basically the next thing that you have to do is to configure the actions. And here you can simply include all the stuff that you want. So for example, add new action. And here you can talk like via Slack or whatever you want. If you type in Slack, you find for example Slack edit message, Slack request approval, Slack send direct message or Slack update profile. If you talk in like Facebook page, create page photo, create page post, you can connect whatever you want with Zapier. If you use Gmail, you can send a mail, like you can do whatever you want. As soon as you give access here to all of these endpoints, you can simply press enable action, then the Gmail sent will be active, and now you can send mails via the MCP server that works over Zapier. So if we come back to n8n, of course you can press save once again, then you can open the chat and send a mail. I already showed you this like a number of times. But one thing that I also want to show you is that you can also copy your host, come back to personal, come back to your MCP for Claude Desktop for example, because here we do not have any trigger. And because we do not have any trigger, we can also do this. We can use the host and the server in one single URL. And of course, once again, you would come here to the server trigger production URL, you would copy these, then you would come once again into the MCP client and we would delete the Zapier actions right now. And we will include, for example, of course, once again, the n8n actions. And then we can talk in this thing right here and we see everything, how it comes through. If you press on open chat, for example, right now, you can trigger once again this workflow and you have everything in one single workflow. Also, this can be really practical. The next thing that I want to show you is that you can eventually also use something similar in n8n with the call n8n workflow tool. If you simply press plus and you use, for example, the call n8n workflow, you can also include this thing right here and you can connect with different workflows. So this workflow could, for example, connect with this workflow. But here you see that we have a separate AI model and this AI model decides what Gmail tool should get triggered. So basically we can do this a little bit simpler and easier with an MCP server. If we simply throw here an MCP server and we would connect here, for example, all our Gmail tools, we do not have the need for a second agent and we save some tokens. This is really practical and every time as soon as you want to update something, it's also easier if you work with a MCP server tool. I do think these MCP servers, they are a great way in order to don't work with the when executed by another workflow tool. But of course also this tool has its purpose. You can also work with when executed by another workflow tool. And if we come back to this MCP host once again, of course you can also connect more MCP clients. If you use here for example the second MCP client tool and maybe also like a third one or whatever, you can build out different MCP servers, of course. So you could simply save this, come back to personal, create new workflow, start once again with, let's just say, a MCP server trigger. And on this MCP server trigger, you could, for example, connect all your Gmail tools. So basically, you would use this Gmail tool, you can duplicate it, connect the next Gmail tool, and you can connect here like every single Gmail node. And you know there are a lot. You can send, reply draft and whatever. So you could, for example, make one MCP server that is specifically for sending mails. Then the next MCP server that is specifically here for your calendar and so on. And also this can bring down the complexity for the agent a little bit. Sometimes if you make an MCP server that has a gazillion different tools, it can make mistakes. And if you use different MCP servers, you can make this a little bit nicer. If you add, for example, like every single Gmail tool under the sun, just use one server. And if you want to use every single calendar tool, just use the next MCP server. And so you can go on and on and on. And you can also connect, for example, different vector stores. You can use one vector store, for example, for prompting. The next vector store for different knowledge, for example, about your business and so on. And you can build out these different MCP servers and connect everything how it should be. So you would connect here, for example, only one vector store. And on your MCP host, of course, you give the endpoint right here. And on the next one, you give a different SSE endpoint that handles different data, and then your agent will be a lot smarter in order to know when it should call what tool, and you can save some tokens because you don't have to trigger an entire new workflow. And this is basically how you can use MCPs natively in n8n. Of course, you can build out host and client in n8n. This is similar to triggering other workflows. But the coolest part is that you have a lower failure rate. You can make also, of course, how many servers as you want, and you can connect them with your clients. And if you come to these awesome MCP servers, of course, you will find a lot of different MCP servers. And they work, of course, in Claude Desktop, in Cursor, in whatever you want. And you can also connect whatever you want. You can connect different databases. You will also find here, for example, stuff like PostgreSQL. And you also find always here the endpoints that you need to call. And with these endpoints, of course, you can connect this with Claude Desktop, but nonetheless, you know that the MCP thing is big. I would assume that as soon as we get a lot of different MCP endpoints, also n8n will include all these endpoints so that we can interact with them really easy. And maybe also a quick side note, if you want to connect to one of these MCP servers that are on GitHub right now, you can unfortunately not do it with the integrated Model Context Protocol node from n8n directly. So this thing will not let you connect to GitHub. In order to connect to this MCP servers, I would strongly recommend you, at least for right now, to connect it to Claude Desktop. It makes it easier. Yes, of course, you can totally do this also inside of n8n, but if you want to do this, you have to use the community node, and you can only use the community node if you either work locally or if you have a self-hosted version. Until now, I will not cover it in this course, but you can also let me know if I should include it. Basically, this stuff is included in the whole MCP course. Like I told you, this is a quick start, but I do think that you can nearly build everything that you want with this quick start. You just need to be a little bit creative. You can build whatever you can imagine. And that's basically all that you need to know about the Model Context Protocol for right now. Of course, this is not a complete deep dive into MCPs, but you are set up, you can make a lot of really cool things, and I hope your applications work a lot smarter. I would recommend you to give Claude, for example, some tools, and to use it in n8n instead of the when called by another workflow tool, so that you can build out really awesome stuff and you can save up some tokens and your applications will be more reliable and easier if you want to make updates. And I see you, of course, in the next video.